In a new book on the Trump administration's final days in office, Senator Lindsey Graham said in a private conversation that the former president would have to deal with his personality problems if he wanted to run again in 2024. The book, titled Peril by veteran Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward, famous for the Watergate investigation, and Robert Costa, was built on 200 interviews with first-hand witnesses of President Trump's last days in the White House. "We've got a very damaged team, Captain," Graham said, according to the book. An article from CNN Politics published Tuesday gave details of the book, including Graham's comments. In person with Trump, his response was a lot more positive. "You've been written off as dead because of January the 6th. The conventional wisdom is that the Republican Party, under your leadership, has collapsed," Graham told Trump. "But if Trump came back to power, it would be the biggest comeback in American history," said Graham, according to the book. In the book, Trump's unwillingness to concede had top U.S. military officers making unprecedented decisions to stop feared military actions in the U.S. and abroad. Kevin Bishop, Graham's spokesperson, said that there was nothing surprising and new about the comments recounted in the book. Senator Graham, he said, has been quite open about telling Trump that he needed to do better with women. Graham, according to Bishop, has said that Trump's abrasive behavior towards women was a problem among several Republican women. When asked about when these comments were made, Bishop said that it is likely to be after the November elections. Former President Trump's continued, but false, insistence that fraud is affecting elections in the United States has Republican consultants deeply concerned, not because they worry that it's true, it's not, but because his words might influence his Republican base of supporters to not vote at all in the 2022 midterms.
Trump has long maintained that his loss to President Joe Biden in the 2020 presidential election was due to fraud,
a lie that he and his allies have never provided any evidence for.
Trump is continuing to push what many have dubbed
the big lie even further, suggesting that the results of recent elections, such as the failed GOP attempt to recall California Gov. Gavin Newsom, were also rigged, and future races will be as well. Last week, when discussing the California recall election, Trump insisted, without providing any evidence, that the race was rigged by Democrats. On Tuesday, he also suggested that upcoming races in 2022 and 2024 would be fraudulent, again without any kind of evidence to back up his claim. "You go to these elections that are coming up in 22 and 24, we're not going to have a country left," Trump said in an interview with Newsmax. The 2020 presidential election was rigged, and we're not going to have a country left in 3 years, I'll tell you that. Those kinds of words could do serious harm for the GOP, party insiders say. What we see is ultimately Republicans led by Trump, very willing to suppress their own vote by telling people the election could be stolen and therefore they may not even have to take part in it, former Republican National Committee spokesman Doug Heye said to The Hill. That cost us the United States Senate, and that's something folks in the Senate are very mindful of. Some evidence suggests that such rhetoric from Trump may have influenced a small number of eligible Republican voters to stay home in the Senate runoffs held in Georgia in January. Polling in December of 2020 found that, of the respondents who said they weren't going to vote, close to 1 in 5, 18%, said it was because they felt the voting process is rigged, or that they were intentionally boycotting the runoff due to fraud they wrongly perceived to have occurred in the presidential election. The proportion of non-voters who chose to stay away from voting booths may have had an impact on the final outcomes of the runoff races, as Sen. John Ossoff, D. Georgia, defeated former Senator David Perdue, R. Georgia, by just 1.2%, and Sen. Raphael Warnock, D. Georgia, ousted Senator Kelly Loeffler, R. Georgia, by 2% of the vote. Tight races in the 2022 midterms could be affected by beliefs in the big lie, too. Voters may be dissuaded from voting for candidates who back the idea, or, as Republican strategists worry, GOP voters may decide not to take part in a process they falsely believe is rigged and won't matter anyway. The big lie is still a powerful motivator for primary candidates, Republican donor Dan Eberhard noted. If the only race that counts is the primary, then amping up the election with stolen rhetoric may help, Eberhard said. But if we're talking about a candidate who has to go on and win a competitive general election, they are going to have a hard time attracting more centrist voters. Republicans are also currently underwater in the polls when it comes to what voters' preferences are in next year's elections. A Morning Consult poll conducted from September 10 to 13 found that 43% of registered voters in the U.S. would prefer to vote for a Democratic candidate on a generic congressional ballot, while only 39% said they would back a Republican candidate.